xAI is training an AI on the biggest single cluster of GPUs in the world. This cluster will grow to be 360 times more powerful than the data center that trained GPT-4. And that doesn't include the recent algorithmic and software optimization gains. At this pace, we shouldn't be surprised if they become one of the first companies to achieve AGI. What pace, you might ask? When Elon Musk announced xAI in July 2023, OpenAI had already dropped GPT-4 and its multimodal capabilities. Anthropic had Claude 2. Google had already dropped Gemini, and Meta was already at Llama 2. So Elon's move looked like a desperate attempt to enter a popular game. But now xAI has the biggest single cluster of GPUs in the world called Colossus. This data center was built in 122 days. To put that in perspective, Google has historically taken 2 to 5 years to build new data centers. And all of them aren't necessarily the biggest data center in the world. Even a serious expansion takes up to 2 years. This includes all phases from design to final testing. xAI is currently training its AI model on 100,000 state-of-the-art H100 GPUs, which is already recognized as the world's largest AI training cluster. But they are planning to expand this to 200,000 GPUs soon, with the ultimate goal of building an earth-shattering supercomputer with over 1 million GPUs. How did xAI manage this groundbreaking achievement? Of course, having Elon as a leader of the project helps, but xAI has managed to secure an unprecedented amount of funding in just a year. They have raised more than $12 billion in 3 rounds of investments. As a comparison, Anthropic and OpenAI have raised $13.7 and $17.9 billion. And obviously they have been around for much longer, so they might actually have less cash available to them right now. This amount of investment not only helps them with their next models, but also allows them to offer free access to their latest model, Grok 2. When I heard Grok 2 is free, I wasn't that excited. Like Meta AI, I assumed it would be noticeably worse compared to the frontrunners. But boy was I surprised. It's the closest thing I found to an alternative to Google. It's a combination of Perplexity AI and ChatGPT with source material and search capabilities, both through the web and inside the Twitter itself. It's somehow super nuanced on every topic. Elon has stated the ultimate goal of AI and its loss function should be getting closer to the truth. So I guess that's why Grok 2 sounds very thoughtful. What does it mean that an AI is thoughtful? Let me show you an example. I asked the same question from Grok 2 and ChatGPT. Is it true that xAI has the biggest cluster of GPUs in the world? The claim that xAI has the biggest cluster of GPUs in the world requires some context and nuance. Yes, xAI has 100,000 GPUs and is expanding to 200,000, which is the biggest right now. But Meta also has plans to expand to 600,000 by the end of 2024. Okay, that's interesting and it will make more sense by the end. Also, Google has TPU clusters, which might not be directly comparable, but are significant in AI computing power. Much of this information comes from public announcements, but there could be larger, less publicized clusters in operation by companies or governments. Yes, that's also a good point. There are huge data centers that we don't know the exact number of GPUs in them, including the Meta cluster that was mentioned earlier. The term biggest can refer to the number of GPUs, but performance, architecture, and how these GPUs are utilized, for example for training or inference, also matter. Another good point, the number of GPUs reserved for research and training new models versus inference GPUs in operation for people's daily use can significantly impact the progress. You might have huge data centers like Meta, but if most of those GPUs are occupied to optimize Instagram Reels and Facebook ads, you are not really pushing the field forward more than others. Isn't this just beautiful? I feel like if I asked some experienced data center engineer, I would get a similar response. And all of these lines are sourced and surprisingly grounded, at least in my experience. Now let's take a look at ChatGPT. Yes, xAI's Colossus supercomputer is currently considered the world's largest supercomputer. And also Meta is training on more than 100,000 GPUs. That's basically it. If you have a Twitter/X account, you can try it yourself. So this new xAI model being trained inside the biggest data center in the world. How does that compare to what we've had until this point? How much more compute is xAI using for their new model? GPT-4, which was a huge step up in compute, used 25,000 A100 GPUs. xAI's data center has more than 100,000 H100 GPUs, and each one of them is up to 9 times more powerful than A100s. So they already have 36 times the compute power. And when they put all of the 1 million GPUs in place, not accounting for next generation of hardware step up, they'll get at least 360 times the raw compute power, not taking into account algorithmic or software optimization, which could make this an order of magnitude bigger. At this rate, how relevant would the current state of AI be in just a couple of years? Does it matter that today Claude Sonnet is 20% better at coding and GPT-4 is 10% better at writing? If the scaling laws hold true, these new computer clusters with hundreds or thousands of times more raw compute power will revolutionize the entire field. Is xAI the only company that is doing this? Not at all. All the major players like Meta, Google, OpenAI, and Anthropic are pursuing exponential growth in computing power. But this raises an important question. Can AI companies outside the Magnificent Seven keep up? There is no world in which they can make as much money in the near term. They'll have to rely heavily on outside investment. How sustainable is that model, considering the sheer magnitude of the next generation of data centers? xAI currently operating Colossus with 100,000 H100s, planning expansion to 1 million plus GPUs by 2028. Although they definitely don't have the money for it right now. So this plan only works if X manages to generate more revenue or keep raising outside investment. Microsoft projecting massive data center expansion, aiming for several facilities that could house up to 1 million GPUs. Meta has plans to deploy 600,000 GPUs probably by the end of this year. Google continuing significant investments in both GPU and TPU infrastructure. Even Oracle building massive new facilities optimized for AI workloads, including an 800 megawatt center in Texas. Anything above 100 megawatt is a massive data center right now. And we are closing in on Gigawatt-scale. Microsoft president says data centers will be responsible for 10% of the global increase in electricity in the next decade. This arms race in computing power suggests we are entering a new era where the gap between the largest AI companies and everyone else could become insurmountable. And it might be the ultimate advantage that is basically impossible to compete with.
It's the folks that own private information, for example, what Elon owns through X, that is going to make the game changer in the quality of the models. Two, he's actually bought now not just the largest NVIDIA cluster, but he's promised to buy 900,000 more. Do you know what happens when you buy 100,000 and then promise to buy 900,000? Not only are you at the front of the line, you consume NVIDIA's attention. And what that means is it's going to be so hard for everybody else to get a hold of what they need to train. I think it's a very tricky situation for those guys.
The computational requirements for training and inference of cutting-edge AI models are growing exponentially, and only a handful of companies may be able to keep up with the necessary investments in infrastructure. My name is Purya, and if you liked the video, hit all the buttons you can down below the video. Thanks for watching.